What's Norman Osborn got up his sleeve in Amazing Spider-Man 797? Have Bruce and Selina found a way to free the world from Ivy's influence? And has a Poison's invasion just begun? I've got all your answers and more on this week's Radio Joel Review. And I'm back with episode 7 of the Radio Joel Review. Here I'll spoil and review all the comics I'm reading this week in about 60 seconds per book. This week I've got 7 Marvel titles for you and 4 DC titles. And that includes Batman, Nightwing, Infinity Countdown, X-Men Red, and a whole lot more. We'll start with the hottest story on the shelves this week, Amazing Spider-Man 797 Go Down Swinging Part 1. The issue is mostly Norman Osborn working an interrogation of someone close to Spider-Man, but we don't know who it is yet. The writing here does a fantastic job of selling Norman as a hell-bent on revenge baddie, but with more of a Carnage twist, making him a very intriguing villain. We also get a look at the strained relationships of Peter and MJ, and Flash and Liz. MJ not wanting to fall into old habits, and Liz enjoying bossing around her old boyfriend. As the book winds down, though, we're shown just how powerful Norman Osborn has become, with carnage pumping through his blood, as the Goblin King shows up and tries to raid his hideout. Norman easily dispatches the Goblin King, and that's when he relearns about the greatest weapon in his arsenal. As Norman is putting on his Goblin costume, the person he's interrogating says that he'll never beat Spider-Man. "You threw his girl off a bridge, and he still fought his way back," he said. And that's when Norman puts it all together, and it's revealed that J. Jonah Jameson is the one who's being interrogated, and he spilled Spider-Man's secret. I loved the dark tone of this book, and the fact that we really got to get a closer look at Norman Osborn and his psyche, especially when he's been more just teased than utilized as a main villain. You know, fans of this title have really been waiting for that to come to light, and this is the issue where all that begins to happen. He doesn't turn into what we were hoping would be the Red Goblin this issue, but it is leading up to a very major Spidey Goblin showdown. Very excited about this title and what's to come. I'm giving this book a 9 out of 10. Next up in the Marvel Universe this week, I'm reading X-Men Red number 2, The Hate Machine. This chapter picks up in the aftermath of what was made to look like Jean Grey murdering the UK ambassador in front of the UN. At this point, the world is pretty divided, and violence has erupted across the world. Jean and the X-Men take asylum in Wakanda, where Jean is contacted by a new mutant named Trinary, who's a technopath. She says she can help Jean and the X-Men, but first she needs their help as she's being held prisoner in India for Robin Hood-type cybercrimes. The breakout plan is going fine until Jean comes under fire and has to break her telepathic link with the man in charge. He regains consciousness, notices what's going on, and activates Code Sentinel. This is another title whose story is being told very well. There's very obvious political and social themes at play here, keeping this book very relevant to today, but I really like the throwback team-up of Jean Grey and Nightcrawler going up against the cool-looking Sentinels again. I really like where this story's going, it's very well written, and I'm giving this book a 9 out of 10 and telling you to jump in on it now. Sticking with the mutants, next up it's X-Men Gold 23, Cruel and Unusual Part 1. We open with a glimpse of the creature coming through the hole in space linked to the negative zone, but are quickly taken to the box, where Kitty Pryde, who's stuck sharing a cell with Callisto, and the rest of the X-Men are imprisoned. While those X-Men are trying to adjust to life looking over their shoulders, Rogue and Iceman are putting together the backup team at the mansion. After getting the new team into the danger room for training, the doorbell rings, and it's Simon Lasker, aka Pyro, asking for forgiveness and a chance to join the team. Rogue and a reluctant Iceman agree, and then we get a brief interlude showing that the Shredded Man is lurking in the underground. Then, just as Kitty, Aurora, and Rachel are settling into Gen Pop, they get confronted by the biggest woman in the yard, and she's looking for a fight. I really like the way this issue teased a couple of really major looming threats while firmly establishing that the team is already in some pretty hot water. This is going to lead to a lot of chaos and a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the rest of this, and I'm giving this book an 8 out of 10. Next up is Doctor Strange Damnation number 2. We left Steven in a pretty serious predicament at the end of the last chapter, so this chapter follows Wong and his assembly of heroes familiar with Mephisto. He tracks down Blade, Elsa Bloodstone, Iron Fist and Moon Knight, Brother Voodoo and Man-Thing, and the Ghost Rider. The interaction between these heroes then at the Sanctum as they plan together is excellent and really shows off how the characters differ from each other, even though they have to work together. So the plan goes, everyone keeps the Ghost Rider heroes out of the way while Wong goes in to rescue Steven. Only there's one major problem when Wong gets inside. Doctor Strange is now a Ghost Rider. So this chapter again had a recap of what happened in chapter 1 of the Damnation storyline, but otherwise this chapter moved along pretty quickly. It jumps around with Wong assembling heroes, we get some good banter amongst those heroes, we go right to war, Scarlet Spider shows up, and then the big reveal of Doctor Strange as a Ghost Rider. I'm all in on this story, it's a lot of fun so far, I'm giving this one 8 out of 10. Next on my Marvel pull list this week was Venom 163, the conclusion to Poison X. Jean and Killer Thrill have both been turned into poisons, and along with Kraven, they attack Venom and the X-Men. Now Scott and the Starjammers are just getting back from lockup in time to join the fight. In an effort to get the Starjammers to safety, Iceman makes a tunnel to their ship, but then blows the rest of the poisons and the symbiote-laced X-Men out into open space, which they can all survive in. After getting back to the spaceport, the X-Men split from their symbiotes and have the Starjammers return them to their home planet. Except when the Starjammers get there, the planet is empty. So while this chapter was the end of the Poison X title line, it was really the beginning of a brand new story involving a poison invasion led by Jean Grey, Killer Thrill, and Kraven most likely. I wasn't that excited about this current book, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10, but I'm really excited about what's to come. Since we were just traveling through space, I'll move on next to Infinity Countdown number 1. In the opening pages, we're shown that there are 2 battles going on, and we're shown who the cast of those battles are. That's pretty much all that happens in this book. In both battles, our heroes come out on top, with Drax protecting the Power Stone and calling in reinforcements, and Groot being restored to his factory settings and regaining the ability to speak. The 2 interesting pieces of this book are the first and last pages. First page has a small being approached to be an armorer for someone yet unknown, and the last page has Wolverine dropping the Space Stone off with Black Widow. The events of this chapter did not need a whole issue to tell this story. We were shown what battle was going to happen, and that's pretty much all that happened. With the limited amount of issues that this series is going to publish, they really needed to get this story moving. I was mostly bored and uninterested during this issue, and I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. Last up on my Marvel list this week was Rise of the Black Panther number 3. Wakanda has just revealed itself to the world, and as the world deals with mixed emotions about this, T'Challa extends an invitation to some of the world's most powerful ambassadors. Back in Wakanda, we can see that the nation is not completely behind King T'Challa's decision, but he proceeds to show off the wonders of their nation to the guest ambassadors. During a dinner with his guests, T'Challa is called away on a security issue as the Winter Soldier has showed up looking for a fight. Black Panther handles him and gets through the brainwashing, but after returning from a UN meeting, he discovers someone else has teleported into Wakanda during their system reboot, and it's Doctor Doom. I was pretty lukewarm on this issue, and I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. I felt like this was here mostly to support the Black Panther movie and all the hype around it lately, but the end of the book where Doctor Doom showed up really piqued my interest. So my 5 out of 10 score stands for this book, but I'm really excited about what's to come next. Shifting gears now and getting to my DC pull list, we're starting with Batman 42, Everyone Loves Ivy, Part 2. I love the way this story is developing. Now, 3 weeks into a world controlled by Ivy, Bruce and Selina are still the only ones not under Ivy's influence. An Ivy-controlled Superman is constantly watching them, but Bruce takes care of him and Selina takes care of the Flashes as they search for someone who may be the key to stopping Ivy. Ivy captures Bruce and Selina, and in a heated argument, Ivy's Superman punches Bruce in the face and kills him. But she revives him and leaves him in the care of Ivy Harley Quinn, and brings Selina in to meet with her at her throne. I'm really loving the manner in which this story is being told, and I can't wait to see what Ivy has planned for Bruce and Selina next. I'm giving this chapter 8 out of 10. Next, we keep it in the Bat family with Nightwing 40, The Untouchable Chapter 6. We left off with Nightwing in some serious trouble underwater, but just as he's running out of air, a squid comes through, and Dick headbutts the squid, who then wraps his tentacles around and busts the chair he's strapped to, and he wriggles free and continues on his hunt for the Judge. Nightwing tracks the Judge to a casino where he's meeting with a corrupt casino owner and makes the owner confess his crimes on camera. After fighting through the League of Limousine Assassins, Nightwing reaches the penthouse, but he's too late. The Judge is gone, and there's a bomb that's about to go off. This arc continues to be fast-paced and full of action, but without forgetting to tell a compelling story. I'm giving this chapter an 8 out of 10, and I'm hyping up the rest of this arc. On to Justice League 40, Justice Lost Part 2. Both Justice Leagues are in the aftermath of a rescue attempt in Arkansas that saw the teams focus on the northern part of town. However, the southern part of town is the lower income folk who are now feeling extremely slighted. The team retreats and argues about how it should have been handled. Back on the team's space station, Aquaman discovers one of the fans messing with the controls so that when the teams get back to the ship, the so-called B team is likely to go down with the ship. After a bunch of arguing, Cyborg orders that everyone is going to stick together and nobody's getting left behind. The issue ends with both teams aboard the craft as it's tumbling into the Earth's atmosphere. The fans are continuing to make life miserable for the Justice League, and every relationship that's touched on in this book seems to be fractured. It's a very compelling arc that's very rooted in today's societal themes, so I'm giving this book a 7 out of 10. Last but not least this week, it's Superman 42 Bizarroverse Part 1. We open with the Bizarro version of the early events of this Superman run. Bizarro is visiting a grave, and Bizarro John is accidentally killing his cat. Right after these events, though, John and Kathy of our world pop into Bizarro World to take a peek through an electroplasma membrane, but when Bizarro Boy and John both touch the membrane, John and Kathy are blown back to their world. But as John lays in bed that night trying to sleep, he gets a rude surprise as Bizarro Boy busts through his window. While I thought the end of this chapter was extremely predictable, I tend to enjoy stories revolving around Bizarro World. So I'm giving this chapter a 7 out of 10 because even though it was predictable, I enjoyed it and I like the direction that it's going in. That's all, everyone. Thanks for watching this episode of the Radio Joel Review. New episodes drop every weekend. Hit that subscribe button. Go follow me on Instagram at RadioJoel. This way you can keep up with the latest news, updates, and giveaways.